You know that scene in, you know when the house takes off with all the balloons?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, imagine that, but like way, way bigger.
Hmm.
Like 1.5 million balloons all going up at the same time,
Wow.
filling up the sky above Cleveland.
Okay.
That was Balloonfest '86.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, huge,
Huh?
ambitious,
Yeah.
and it pretty quickly got a bad reputation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was it really the disaster everyone remembers?
Hmm.
Today we're going to do a deep dive into Balloonfest.
Okay.
Separate fact from fiction. Figure out what really went down.
Sounds good.
And to help us unpack all this, we have an expert on Cleveland's history and culture with us today.
Well, Cleveland has this incredible spirit.
Yeah.
It's a city that has seen some tough times,
Uh-huh.
but it always seems to bounce back
Yeah.
with humor and resilience.
I like that.
You know, it's often called the biggest small town
Mm,
because even though it's a big city,
right
there's
on.
a real sense of community.
For sure. And the 1980s were a pretty interesting time for Cleveland.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The city was trying to find its way after the decline of its industrial base,
Yeah.
looking for a second act.
Right. The 80s were a time of change for a lot of Rust Belt cities.
Mm,
Cleveland was no different.
yeah.
There was this real feeling that people wanted to revitalize the city, attract attention and investment.
And that's where Balloonfest comes in.
Exactly.
This massive spectacle.
Yeah.
They wanted to break a world record.
Wow.
They built this huge structure to hold all the balloons
Hmm.
right in Public Square
Okay.
in front of Terminal Tower.
I see.
Can you picture that?
Yeah.
A balloon structure the size of a small building
Wow.
right in the heart of downtown Cleveland.
Hmm.
It must have been amazing to see.
Yeah, it really caught the city's imagination.
Right.
It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
Thousands of volunteers, mostly high school students,
Wow.
worked so hard to inflate all those balloons.
Yeah.
They planned out all the logistics so carefully. They coordinated with everyone from the airport to the fire department.
Make it all work?
Yeah.
But then nature decided to throw a wrench in the works.
Oh, no.
A massive storm slams into Cleveland
Uh-oh.
the day before the event. I've read about hurricane-force winds,
Wow.
torrential rain debris flying all over the streets.
You'd think they'd call the whole thing off.
I know, right?
Yeah.
You'd think. But
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
They'd already put so much into it.
yeah.
Time, money, emotion. Giving up wasn't really an option at that point. Things like this kind of develop a momentum of their own.
That's true.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy how fast people went from excitement
Yeah.
to focusing on the negative stuff. Like
Yeah.
the story needed a bad guy,
Hmm.
and all of those balloons just fit the bill perfectly.
It really makes you think about how powerful a story can be.
Uh-huh.
How one event can be seen in so many ways.
Exactly.
Depending on who's telling it.
Right. And with Balloonfest, it feels like, yeah.
That disaster story kind of took over
Yeah.
and hid what really happened.
Mhm.
Like take the missing fishermen, for example.
Right.
The Coast Guard was already looking for them before the balloons even went up.
Really?
Their boat flipped over
Oh, wow.
during that big storm the night before
Uh-huh.
and Lake Erie in early fall.
Yeah.
That water's freezing.
Right.
It's really hard to survive for long in that.
So you're saying the balloons might not have been what killed them?
That's right.
Hmm.
The Coast Guard report even says
Yeah.
that the balloons might have made the search harder
Oh, wow.
because it was hard to tell a person's head
Right.
from a balloon.
Wow.
But saying Balloonfest caused their deaths?
Yeah.
That's just not the whole story.
That's a good point. And what about the airport closing? It
Yeah.
sounds really serious.
Uh-huh.
Shutting down a whole airport because of balloons.
It does sound dramatic,
Yeah.
but the truth is
Yeah.
a little less exciting.
Okay.
It was Burke Lakefront.
Hmm.
A pretty small airport.
Uh-huh.
Not a lot of commercial flights used it.
Okay.
And it was only closed for a short time, like 30 minutes.
That's not that bad.
More of a minor inconvenience than
Yeah.
a real crisis.
More like a traffic jam than a city shutdown.
Right. And the traffic accidents people talked about,
Yeah, were they really that serious?
most of them were just fender benders.
Okay.
People got distracted by all the balloons falling.
Uh-huh.
There are even stories of people stopping their cars on the highway
Oh,
to
no.
chase after the balloons.
Really?
It kind of shows the fun side of it all, I guess.
It's kind of funny to imagine
Yeah.
people pulling over on a busy highway
Yeah.
to chase balloons.
Yeah. It shows something about human nature, don't you think?
For sure.
Our fascination with the unusual, the
Yeah.
unexpected,
Yeah.
even when it leads to crazy situations.
So we've talked about debunking some of the more dramatic stuff.
Right.
But what about the environment?
Yeah.
leasing 1.5 million balloons.
You can't really deny that that's bad for the planet.
You're right. It definitely caused some damage.
Mm.
But what people don't always remember is
Yeah.
Disneyland did something similar just the year before
Really?
for their 30th anniversary.
Mm.
They released a ton of balloons, too.
Wow.
And they didn't get nearly as much criticism.
It makes you wonder if Cleveland got unfairly picked on.
It does raise some questions
Yeah.
about how the media covers things,
Right.
public perception, and why certain events become symbols for bigger problems.
It's like Balloonfest became the example of environmental damage
Right.
when other things just slipped under the radar.
Exactly. It reminds us that context matters.
For sure.
And sometimes the stories we tell about things are just as important as the events themselves.
Though we've spent a lot of time talking about the aftermath.
Yeah.
And debunking some of the myths around Balloonfest.
Right.
But it's important to remember this wasn't some evil plan. They wanted to bring joy to a city that was struggling. Create something amazing that would get the world's attention.
Yeah.
And maybe remind people that Cleveland was still a vibrant and strong place.
And for a little while, it did just that.
Right.
Those pictures of millions of balloons over the city became iconic, a symbol of hope and ambition.
There's something kind of touching about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
A city trying to change its story, even if it was just for a day.
It shows something about what we all want.
Yeah.
Connection, shared experiences, something bigger than just everyday life. And it reminds us that history isn't always simple.
Right.
It's full of contradictions, unexpected outcomes, moments of brilliance and mistakes.
Balloonfest definitely has all of that.
Yeah, it did.
A bold idea, a community effort,
Right.
an amazing visual spectacle,
It was.
but also some miscalculations and some very real and very sad outcomes.
Yeah.
And how the story's been told over the years
Right.
shows how our understanding of the world changes, our values,
Yeah.
and our fascination with events that both inspire
Right.
and warn us.
Balloonfest really embodies all of that. Yeah. And the media really shaped how people saw Balloonfest.
Right. They were all excited at first.
Yeah, full of wonder.
But then when they focused on the problems, the story just kind of took off on its own.
The media loves a good disaster story.
Yeah, for sure.
It's dramatic, it's visual, and it often reinforces stereotypes about people or places.
Right. In this case,
Yeah.
it played into that existing idea of Cleveland, a city that had been through tough times,
Right.
the butt of jokes,
Yeah.
a city that couldn't catch a break.
Yeah. So Balloonfest almost became a symbol for Cleveland itself.
Yeah.
This well-meaning but kind of messed up thing.
It's a bit oversimplified, don't you think?
Yeah, it is.
To boil down a whole city's identity
Right.
to one single event.
Especially one that's become such a legend.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to be critical of the stories we hear,
Uh-huh.
to question what we're told.
Absolutely. And to look for different perspectives.
Yeah.
History is rarely just one simple story.
Right.
It's a mix of experiences, interpretations,
Yeah.
and often conflicting accounts.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Balloonfest 86, I'm wondering, what's the real takeaway here?
Right.
Is it a warning about the environment? A symbol of Cleveland's struggles? Or is it something more complex?
Maybe it's all of those things, and none of them at the same time.
Okay.
Maybe the real legacy of Balloonfest is that it makes us talk, makes us think critically about how we understand the past. It reminds us that even simple events can be complicated and have many sides.
There's always more to the story.
Key at first.
And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive.
That's right.
To dig deeper, find those hidden layers, and leave you with something to think about.
To make you curious.
Right.
To think critically and to really appreciate the complexities of history and of life itself.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, think about the stories you've been told, the things you've accepted as true. Challenge them. Question them.
Okay.
Look for the nuances, the contradictions, the unexpected angles, because that's where the real insights are.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
You're welcome.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.